Have you ever felt the need to explain every decision you make, just so people won't misunderstand you? Maybe you say no, but then spend 5 minutes defending it. Maybe you make a choice, but feel pressure to justify it. Maybe you think that if people fully understand your reasons, they'll respect you more. But what if the opposite is true? What if the more you explain yourself, the less seriously people take you? This is the story of a man who spent years trying to prove he was right, until one day he discovered that real respect doesn't come from long explanations. It comes from quiet confidence. Stay with me would be back. Daniel had always been the kind of man who explained himself. If he arrived late, he didn't just apologize, he gave a full report. Traffic, a phone call from his mother, a delayed bus, a missed turn. If he declined an invitation, he didn't simply say he couldn't make it. He described his schedule in detail, hoping the other person would understand and not feel offended. If someone questioned his decision, he felt a quiet pressure in his chest, as if silence would make him look guilty. So he talked and talked and talked. He believed that if people understood his reasons, they would respect him. But over time, something subtle began to change. The more he explained, the less seriously people seemed to take him. His words grew longer, their patience grew shorter, and without realizing it, Daniel had trained the world to question him before he even made a move. At work, it was worse. When his manager asked why he chose a certain approach on a project, Daniel responded with a 10-minute explanation. He walked through every step, every thought, every backup plan. His coworkers would nod politely, but some of them exchanged glances. Others interrupted him halfway through. One afternoon, after presenting an idea he had spent weeks developing, a colleague simply said, "You don't have to justify everything." The room fell quiet. Daniel laughed awkwardly, pretending it didn't sting, but it did. Because deep down, he wasn't explaining to inform anyone. He was explaining to defend himself. He was afraid that without a detailed defense, people would think he was careless, irresponsible, or wrong. So he kept proving himself, again and again, and every explanation made him feel smaller. Outside the office, the pattern continued. When his friends planned a weekend trip and he chose not to go, he wrote long messages about his budget, his workload, his responsibilities. When his sister questioned why he hadn't visited in months, he outlined his calendar as if presenting evidence in a courtroom. He thought he was being considerate, but one evening, as he sat alone rereading a message he had just sent, he noticed something unsettling. He had written 3 long paragraphs explaining why he couldn't attend a dinner. The reply he received was only 4 words. "Okay, do what you want." That was it. No gratitude, no deeper understanding, just dismissal. Daniel stared at the screen. He realized something painful. The more he tried to make people comfortable with his decisions, the less comfortable he felt within himself. The breaking point came on a quiet Thursday afternoon. Daniel had decided to turn down a last-minute assignment at work. He had already completed his responsibilities and he was exhausted. When his manager asked him to stay late again, Daniel felt the familiar tightening in his throat. His mind rushed to gather reasons. He was tired. He had promised his father he would visit. He hadn't slept well. He began speaking quickly, layering explanation upon explanation. But halfway through, his manager raised a hand and interrupted him. "Daniel," he said calmly, "I didn't ask for your life story. I just asked if you could stay." The words were not harsh, but they were sharp enough. In that moment, Daniel felt exposed, not because he said no, but because he realized he didn't know how to say it without defending his right to exist. That evening, Daniel walked home slowly. The city noise felt distant. He replayed the moment in his head again and again. Why did he feel guilty for being tired? Why did declining a request feel like committing a crime? As he passed a small park, he noticed an elderly man sitting alone on a bench feeding birds. There was something calm about him, something steady. Daniel sat down on the other end of the bench, still lost in thought. After a few minutes, the old man spoke without looking at him. "You look like someone who talks too much when he should speak less." Daniel blinked in surprise. He almost laughed, but he didn't. Instead, he asked quietly, "How did you know?" The man smiled faintly. "Because you look tired, not physically, but tired of proving yourself." Daniel didn't know why, but he found himself opening up. He told the old man how he felt misunderstood, how he feared being seen as irresponsible, how he believed that if people didn't know his reasons, they would judge him. The man listened patiently. When Daniel finished, the old man tossed the last crumbs to the birds and said, "If someone respects you, they don't need a full explanation. If they don't respect you, no explanation will ever be enough." The words settled heavily in Daniel's chest. He had never thought about it that way. He had spent years trying to earn approval through overclarity, but respect, the man implied, was not built on lengthy justifications. It was built on quiet confidence, and Daniel realized something uncomfortable. He didn't trust his own decisions unless others approved them first. The next day presented a small test. A colleague asked Daniel why he chose a simpler design for a project instead of something more elaborate. Normally, Daniel would launch into a detailed breakdown, but this time he paused. He felt the familiar urge to explain everything. He noticed the anxiety rising. Then he remembered the old man's words. He took a slow breath and simply said, "Because it works best." The room went quiet for a moment. No one challenged him. No one demanded further clarification. The conversation moved on. Daniel sat back in his chair, surprised. The world had not collapsed. No one had accused him. No one had attacked him. He felt a small shift inside, like a door gently closing on years of unnecessary noise. Over the following weeks, Daniel practiced saying less. When invited somewhere he didn't want to go, he replied, "I can't make it." No extra paragraphs. When questioned about a decision, he responded with short, steady answers. At first, it felt uncomfortable, almost rude. He worried people would think he was cold or distant, but something unexpected happened. People began to treat him differently. His coworkers stopped interrupting him. His manager asked for his opinion more often. His friends accepted his answers without drama. The less he defended himself, the more confident he appeared. And the more confident he appeared, the less people challenged him. Daniel began to understand that over-explaining had not been kindness. It had been insecurity disguised as politeness. There were still difficult moments. One afternoon, a close friend confronted him. "You've changed," she said. "You don't explain things like you used to." Daniel felt the old instinct rising again, the desire to reassure, to soften, to justify. But instead, he smiled gently and said, "I just trust my choices more now." His friend studied him for a moment, then nodded. The conversation ended peacefully. Daniel realized something powerful. When you stop over-explaining, you give others space to reveal how they truly see you. Some will respect your boundaries. Some will feel uncomfortable. But that discomfort belongs to them, not to you. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt the weight of unnecessary approval lifting from his shoulders. Months passed and the transformation deepened. Daniel noticed that his internal dialogue had changed. He no longer rehearsed conversations in his head, preparing defenses before anyone accused him. He no longer drafted long messages only to delete and rewrite them. His thoughts were clearer, his decisions firmer. He discovered that silence, when used with intention, carries strength. It signals self-trust. It communicates that you do not need external permission to exist as you are. The habit of explaining had once felt like protection, but it had actually been a quiet surrender of authority. By speaking less, Daniel was not hiding. He was standing. One evening, Daniel returned to the park where he had met the old man. He found the same bench empty, birds scattered across the grass. He sat down and reflected on how much had changed since that conversation. He realized that self-respect is not loud. It does not argue endlessly. It does not beg to be understood. It sets a boundary and remains steady. Daniel had believed that clarity required long speeches, but real clarity, he learned, can exist in a single sentence. Or even in silence. As the sun dipped below the trees, he felt a quiet gratitude, not just for the advice he had received, but for the courage it took to apply it. The real test came when a major opportunity appeared at work. A leadership role opened and Daniel applied. During the interview, he was asked challenging questions. In the past, he would have responded with lengthy explanations, trying to impress through detail. But this time, he answered clearly and concisely. When he didn't know something, he admitted it calmly instead of masking uncertainty with excessive words. The panel listened closely. He noticed something new in their expressions: respect. Not because he said more, but because he said exactly enough. And when he left the room, he felt peace. Whether he got the role or not, he had shown up as himself without apology. A week later, Daniel received the call. He had been selected. As he hung up the phone, he didn't feel the urge to explain to anyone why he deserved it. He didn't feel the need to justify his success. He simply accepted it. When colleagues congratulated him, he thanked them. No long speeches, no defensive laughter, just quiet acknowledgement. He had learned that self-respect changes how the world responds to you. When you treat your decisions as valid, others are more likely to do the same. When you speak as though you owe no explanation for existing, people sense that certainty. Daniel's journey was not about becoming distant or arrogant. It was about understanding that constant explanation can be a subtle form of self-doubt. The day he stopped explaining himself was not dramatic. There was no applause, no announcement. It was a quiet shift, a decision to trust his own judgment without seeking endless approval. And in that quiet decision, he found strength he never knew he had. He realized that respect does not come from convincing others of your worth. It begins when you stop questioning it yourself. And so, if you ever find yourself over-explaining your choices, your boundaries, or your dreams, remember Daniel's story. The world does not need a detailed defense of who you are. The people who respect you will not demand it. And those who demand it may never be satisfied anyway. Speak when necessary, be clear when needed, but do not feel obligated to justify your existence. Sometimes the most powerful sentence you can say is simple, calm, steady, and complete. Because the day you stop explaining yourself may be the day you finally begin respecting yourself.